The following interview is a Blanchard community production. This is Leadership Unfiltered, Community Conversations, an interview series dedicated to diving into leadership topics relevant to today's world. I'm your host, Sarah Hempel, a community builder, relationship guru, and passionate difference maker. Our aim is to hold a safe space for difficult conversations as we shed light on leadership around the world. So, join us as we dive into Leadership Unfiltered. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 5th episode of Leadership Unfiltered Community Conversations. I'm Sarah. My pronouns are she, her, and this month I am so excited. We're going to talk about bridging generations, navigating the workplace dynamics across ages and identities. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by Marie Michel Thermil. She's born and raised in Montreal, of Haitian origin, and Marie Michel is the founder and consultant of MMT Consultation, a company that offers organizational and personal development. She fosters environments where authentic expression, collaboration, and curiosity can flourish. Through curated workshops and consultation sessions, she facilitates change and transitions on a group or individual level. I am so excited to have you here today, Marie Michel.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today.
Yes, this is going to be great. So to start off, I would just like to know more about your journey. So tell us about your journey to get to where you are today in life.
Yes. So I started my business last year in September. So it's still fairly recent. And my intention was to see what I could do with the baggage that I had so far and see how I can help people manage through life transitions. So career pivots, career breaks, or developing leadership, developing competencies, mentorship program, all that stuff. I wanted to feel like on a daily basis, I wanted to feel competent, helpful, and impactful, like see the contribution of my impact like quickly. Because when you're used to working on big corporate projects, you don't see your impact as fast as you would want. And that's something that was very much missing for me. Like you said, I was born and raised in Montreal from Haitian background, and I did my studies in organizational development, sociology, psychology, and change management. And I had a pretty academic background. Like I went to university and then to grad school. And then I entered the corporate world pretty young. I think I've been working for at least half of my life. I'm self-identifying as a millennial, as a young millennial. So yes, half of my life been working different jobs, but in the corporate world, I think it's been around a little under 10 years.
Okay.
And I've worked in the federal government, I've worked in private sector and nonprofit. So I've dabbled in different sectors, and they all have certain commonalities, especially when it comes to administrative stuff, HR. You see the same type of procedures and routines and issues that come up on different levels across industries.
You're dealing with people, right?
Yes,
At the heart and core of every one of those roles in no matter what industry.
exactly. And it's good for me because I'm particularly curious to go and see what's going on out there, because you can talk to people, you can live vicariously through their own experience, but until you go and set foot in those environments, you can't really make up your mind or have like an idea. You really need to go and figure it out. And that's what I did. And it led me to a point where I was like, you know what? These environments and also my own conditioning didn't really allow me to go and explore and expand the skills and the talents that I already had. And I couldn't do the things the way I wanted to do them. So at some point I was like, okay, let's put a break on this. Do I have enough professional baggage, academic baggage, life experience to just start something and see if
Hmm.
it's viable, see if I can bring the kind of change and the kind of environments that I would have wanted for myself. If can I create that, and can I take people with me and help them through their own life transitions?
Hmm.
So yeah, that's what my journey has been so far.
I love that. I'm all about relationships and connections, and it sounds like you get the joy of doing a lot of that in your day-to-day work as well. That's wonderful. So I want to kind of move into our core topic today about bridging generations and navigating the workplace across a lot of diversity and thinking about representation. Can you tell me about a time when representation really deeply impacted the work you or the work that you're doing?
Yes, that's a great question. Actually, I do believe representation matters. And I think we hear that sentence a lot, and we've been
Right.
hearing it a lot. However, I think it's also very layered. It's nice to have someone you can look up to and be like, oh, it's great. This person exists. So it means that I can maybe
Yep.
go and be that person, or they've paved the way for me. But I think the kind of representation also matters, and that's why I feel like it's very layered. And a moment that was very pivotal and interesting for me was when I was um, in university. I had a class called Television and Society, where we were exploring how television influences and also reflects social dynamics, way of thinking, stigmas, and all of that. And it was right about the time where we were seeing those TV shows about like Olivia Pope or Annalise
Oh, yep.
Keaton. If you're a primetime TV show
Yeah, I'm familiar.
enthusiast,
Olivia Pope, you've got me there.
there you go. These strong black leads where the story is centered around them, and I don't think we've seen that kind of lead in like mainstream primetime TV in a long time. So it was nice to see those shows pop up, but it was interesting, like in a university class, to analyze
Yeah.
what it was conveying in terms of image, and also how it was influencing the way we saw Black women, or on a
Hmm.
certain level, perpetuating certain ways of seeing Black women.
Right.
And it was nice to see that there were already theories out there and ways of looking at it from like a sociological standpoint. But
Hmm.
as like a Black woman being, been raised in North America, I think it just reflected back at me the hustle of being a Black woman.
Hmm.
Don't get me wrong, I love these characters, the Olivia Popes, the Annalise Keating. I
Yep.
love them, and they are the epitome of, boss lady, coming to save the day. But also you can see the nuance, and that's why I like these characters. It's very nuanced. It's not just like
Yeah.
characterized as the strong Black woman, but you see that a lot of their actions, or what they're doing, is also stemming from the environment that they grew up in, and this sense of like not good enoughness, this sense of like trying to prove themselves relentlessly, because we're in systems of perceived meritocracy when we know it's not that. We're surrounded
Mhm.
by systems of oppressions that are mirroring um, meritocracy, and like if you work hard and if you sacrifice yourself, you will achieve it and you will be great. And
Mhm.
I think that is still something that is perpetuating through characters like these. And that since these TV shows, I think we've entered into more nuanced conversations where a lot of Black people are like, you know what, I'm tired. I don't want to be doing
Right.
this anymore. Let me buy into the softer life. Let me quiet quit. Let me
Mhm.
just shift from the rise and grind to something that's maybe more holistic
Mhm.
and good for my well-being.
Right.
So I think this class kind of started this conversation in my head and it with people around me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I was raised by a very hardworking Haitian mom. I am the youngest of four siblings. We're all girls. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it reinforces the mentality of working and striving to be great and excellence and just being a representative of your people. I was raised in a very white suburbs of Montreal. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not always the first because I have older siblings and
Mm-hmm.
there's people that came before me, but I'm very often
Okay.
the only black face in a white space or the only black person around. So it's something that I've grown to um, not necessarily embrace, but I'm used to it by now, and it doesn't phase me as much because it's been normalized from a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
And with that comes a certain pressure of just being
Right.
great or being excellent, not making mistakes, and just like
Mm-hmm.
following a certain way of doing things so that you don't disrupt, but you can amaze or astonish people through how excellent you are. Um,
So many great points that you bring up. I
I'm
mean,
sorry, I'm just like, ah.
no, I love this. This is amazing. I'm thinking about a conversation that I just had the other day with some women around kind of assumed constraints that some of us have as women, that we have to do things a certain way. And these women that I was talking to are trailblazers, and they're like, I never thought like that. I just went and did what I needed to do. But I think you bring up such a valid point about the representation is so important. But when you're exploring Olivia Pope and some of these characters, you probably start to take on some assumed constraints like, well, this is the way I have to do it because this is the way that Olivia Pope did it to save the day, to make herself known in that space. And it's about balance, and which is a really great point that you share. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I
No,
wanted to make that connection because I really,
yes,
it's a thread
please.
that's been running through many conversations of mine lately.
Yeah, and I think that's something that and that's why intersectionality is so important. I
Yeah.
think it's a conditioning, unfortunately, that a lot of women and people who identify as women have to
Mhm.
just walk into a space and have to be immaculate or just
Yeah.
great right off the bat, which doesn't really allow for the humanness of making mistakes, not knowing, asking questions.
Mhm.
It's it takes a toll on you. It's not sustainable.
Right.
And honestly, for me, it has tainted my experience in the workplace because the few Black women that I've seen in management position or C-suite position, um, they were all great and they were very inspiring and amazing to be around.
Hmm.
And I don't think I've ever met any one of them across race and color that was relaxed
Hmm.
because of what they had to do to get there, because of the environment that they were in, because of the people around them that weren't necessarily rooting for them all the time or wanting them at the table. So I understand the condition, I understand the environment, and still, what I can see is a lot of women who can't um not necessarily relax, but don't necessarily have that balance of I do leave work at work and
Hmm.
like this is the rest of my life. I'm doing whatever I want. These are my hobbies. This is how I relax. This is what I do with my community, my family. And a lot of them have that. And still, work takes such a big amount of their life
Hmm.
that they have to sacrifice certain parts of outside of work. so that
Hmm.
work can still be so important because of the stature, because of the position, because of the trailblazing. And
Yeah.
I thank them for that, because you need trailblazers. You need someone to pave the path and
Yeah.
set an example. And at the same time, I was looking at some of them being like, I'm exhausted for you.
Right. Just watching them. Yeah.
I'm exhausted for myself.
Right.
I'm not sure I want that.
Right. Which lately I've heard that there's less of the younger generation that want to like raise their hand to be a leader, to be a manager, to take on some of those roles because they look at what everyone ahead of them has sacrificed. So that kind of leads into my next question as we're talking about intergenerational relationships. You mentioned that you self-identify as a younger millennial. Well, I self-identify as the older end of the millennial spectrum, but I'm still going to call myself a millennial in there. So, what advice would you have to give to someone new to the workplace to build bridges between all of these generations and thrive?
Another great question. I think, if I'm talking from my own experience, I have like four things that comes to mind. The first one is take what you can and then leave the rest. I think um, a lot of people go into, I'll just say, corporate life, expecting to find a mentor and just like follow them
Mm-hmm.
to the end of the world. And I'm like, yes, and use discernment. You have your own baggage, you have your own live experience, and you have your own ability to discern whether or not the advice that they're giving suits you, whether or not it's something that you aspire to, and like give yourself the space to try. But I
Mm-hmm.
feel like a lot of people know when something feels what when the advice feels right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, take what you can, leave the rest. You don't have
Love that.
to follow anybody fully. It's nice to have a blueprint or like a first person who did something, but then you can just take what fits and then create your own path, or like just put it in your own bag and just do your own thing.
Yep.
Um, the second thing is, like I said, discernment. Um, for someone who has been told, oh, just take this job, it'll be a stepping stone towards something else. Um, I think it's very important to pause and see how that resonates with you. Not everything is a stepping stone to somewhere. And sometimes a stepping stone to a direction you don't really want to go in is
Mm-hmm.
very costly. Even if it's very informative and you're like, okay, I've tried it and now I know it's not for me.
Mm-hmm.
If you keep doing that with things that don't fulfill your soul,
Right.
um, it's not going to help. It's going to be very costly in terms of well-being and just like mental health.
Exhausting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really exhausting, and we live in a world that is already exhausting. So
Right.
don't put
We don't need to add to it unintentionally.
no, you really don't. Um, but that's something that comes with time and experience. But if I can just like put it out there and help, that's something I'm happy about. Um, the third thing I would say is, as a young professional, which is kind of counterintuitive, learn to do less. And when I say do less, it's not get the job and don't do anything. That's not what I'm doing. It's, um, I think we put a tremendous amount of pressure on ourselves to like prove ourselves and do anything and say yes to every
Yep.
project, any excuse to do overtime and show that we're able to go the extra mile and blah, blah, blah. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, but is it sustainable?
Right.
No.
Okay to
Sometimes
say.
it's better to just do less, but intentionally, and take the time to do it well and showcase what you like, what you can do through those few projects or few initiatives,
Yep.
and then go do more of that, because it is, instead of depleting you, it's nourishing you and it's also
Right.
showing people what you can do. So that's what I mean by doing less. And also I think
Yeah.
a lot of research show that if you do less, you can also make more space for community time and family time, and just
Yes.
making sure that you have a part of yourself that you can also give to others without it draining you. And the last thing, which is completely, it doesn't have anything to do with everything I just said. When you enter a new job, sometimes it's really hard to find your community or a group of people that you vibe with right away. But I think it's important. And that's something that I've had in all the jobs that I've had so far. Find yourself a ride or die, for lack of a better term,
Love it.
someone who's like your work bestie, someone
Yeah.
whose friendship will extend like outside of the work life, even long after you leave or they leave,
Mm-hmm.
because you have a shared experience with them. You need that person that you can go to an event or celebrate triumph with, that knows your environment, like
Mm-hmm.
what you have to deal with every day. I think that that has been a life-saving um component of every job I've had. So
Yes.
have that best friend.
Yeah. Oh, that's so important. They can laugh with you, they can cry with you can vent to them, and they can
Yeah.
remind you of your why you're doing the work that you're doing, which is often for me a good reminder when
Yeah,
you get frustrated.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And often they can understand you on a different level than anybody who's not at work with you. Like
Right.
they can't really relate. And
Mhm.
especially if it's someone that can understand the intersectionality and nuance of navigating the corporate world as a black neurodivergent woman. Like
Mhm.
it's a lot of different component that a lot of places are not well suited to address and or make space for. So it's nice to
Mhm.
have that buddy
Yeah.
with you.
Oh, this has been a fabulous, fabulous conversation. I have enjoyed every second of it. I love your wisdom. I just want to say thank you. So, as we wrap up our episode, do you have any like final thoughts or things you want to share with the listeners?
Um, Mostly take the time to reflect on how any situation impacts you. Like it's okay to not react in the moment.
Mhm.
But for me personally, I always need some time to take a pause and see how it lands in my
Yeah.
body and then see how it lands in my brain. Because I think
Mhm.
we're very encouraged and programmed to stay here and just react. And I'm like, no, there's ways of just like making sure that it lands with you before you decide on a course of action. And I think that to be more gentle with yourself will help you be less reactive and more maybe proactive in the way you engage with the world. So yeah.
What a fabulous piece of advice. Ah, thank you. Well, as we wrap up our episode today, I want to say thank you so much, Marie Michel. It was truly my pleasure to have you here with me today. Thank you for sharing your story with everyone. And thank you to everyone else for joining in and sharing this time with us. Until next time, join us in the Blanchard community to unpack more conversations around leadership. Bye.
Thank you, Sarah. Bye, everybody.